What's up, everybody? Who do we have here tonight? What's going on? Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Hopefully my sound check friend will help me out in a minute. Wyatt's here. He says, whoop, whoop. This calls for a celebration. I'm going to watch this full stream in the bathtub and down a whole gallon of Snapple at the same time. That's, what do they call that? Living the dream? I think you're living the dream, my friend. You're living the dream. Faustian, what's up, Faustian? Atropa, my darling, what is up? Solora S, hello, everybody. Scarlet Bales, what's up? Haven't seen you in a little bit. Good to see you. A friend, I guess a friend, I don't know if you know Max, but a sort of friend introduced me to, I guess, your husband, Nate. I don't know if you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys are still together. I don't follow, like, everybody's relationships, so I don't know. But, yeah, introduced me to him on Twitter. I got to get around to, like, rebuilding contacts with people. I've been very solitary in the last year or so by design. After all the witch wars that fell out and finished last year, doing my part to try to, help with the censorship issues and all of that. I don't like entanglements. That is to say, I don't like community drama, conflict like that. And there was a lot of that going on for a minute there, and I don't know if it's still going on. It seems like it finally died out, but to be brutally honest, like I'm over it, but I do miss some of the people that I was talking to a lot. So I really got to reach out to some people some more and start networking again. It's been a little bit. Devin McLean, what's up, Devin? Hopefully everything is well with you. Kelly, what's up, Kelly Meadows? Thank you for the congratulations on the 6,660 subscribers. We're not allowed to go any more above that. Everyone don't subscribe to me. No, you can subscribe. I'm kidding. If you subscribe to me, then we just got to keep going and then get to like 60,000 and 66,600 subs will be the next big one. Yeah. Good to see that you're still together, Scarlett. That's actually good. Joffrey, what's up, Joffrey? How's it going? So, there's not a lot going on with me today. I will say that there's definitely some things that are developing and improving, and hopefully I can finish and move forward with them sometime in the next month or so. The book is problematic. I had to sort of sit down and do a great deal of shadow work and, dealing with attachments and things like that to try to figure out, what my deal is with my current book and why I can't seem to get it. It's not a matter of writer's block. I have no end of things that I could say. It's writing something structured that is like what I want. I could just write a book of ideas and shit, and I'm sure it would be okay. But what I'm trying to do is create sort of like Become the Maelstrom was meant to be a foundation for the next, bunch of stuff that I'm trying to do. But there's a lot of attachment I'm dealing with. We'll put it that way. And attachment is normal, and getting through it, is an attachment too. So at some point I'll clear my fog and I'll be good. But some other things have been going well, and I have made some breakthroughs in a couple of areas in the last week, especially this week. And I can sort of attribute that a little bit to being required, because it's the busy season, to spend very little time around the internet and being pretty much, like I sit around mostly during the day, either working or relaxing around a campfire waiting for customers. Yes, we have a little bonfire at the work that I have, selling Christmas trees to Christians or Yule logs to Christians. And doing that, the labor, the time, the lack of connection with the internet and all the drama and the toxicity of politics and everything else was really good for me. And it's still good for me. And hopefully I can keep this habit of not letting those things be so major in my mind, to just sort of accept that this is how things are. You can't save the world. You can't fix everything. We're just going to have to go through this tunnel, and hopefully there's light at the other end. got to look and act like a normie for the public and be a resistor on the background, right? So I will say I'm kind of tired of saying I told you so. So what else can I say? But the good thing that I have done is I have sort of come to terms with what I want to do. Actually, let me turn this thing on. I forgot the little viewer count icons and all this kind of stuff. I forgot to turn all that back on. There's a lot of stuff that I'm trying to do in the coming year or so. I'm trying to, so I don't want to give too much away because that kind of spoils me. I'm trying to retool my my website and a few other things to basically establish the beginnings of a kind of order for people to use. It's meant to be like a temple. That's it's not meant to be something you join and belong to and you got to pay money to and all this crap. It's meant to be like an online repository with different levels of engagement. You can get a lot out of it for free, as I always do. I always try to make sure that the most important stuff is available for free. As I say, the self-evident truth should never be behind a paywall. When you're talking about actual mystical wisdom, if somebody's charging you for that, it's not that there's anything wrong with people making money and stuff. It's that something like that, it's like someone paying to be told the sky is blue. In my opinion, there are certain things that really are like charging for them is dumb, right? I mean, do as thou will, but it's kind of dumb. But certain, shall we say, more artistic creations or other things, those things are different. Like you can charge for your artwork. You can charge for your creative products. You can charge for your books. You can charge for this and that. But the principal truth should be a labor of love. And I don't mean that like from a moralistic standpoint. I mean that simply from, like I said, charging people for certain things is like charging them to tell them the sky is blue. And I guess if some people want to pay money for that, that's fine. I'm not opposed to it. It's just for me, I'm not doing it like that. But so there will be a lot of stuff that's going to be of different levels of involvement for people. And I don't want to say too much about it because if I do, I spoil myself and I don't actually get it off the ground. And I really got, to finish certain things to make that happen. So that's one thing. Now I do want to, since Christmas is not that far away, Yule, Christmas, all of this stuff, I want to address a couple of fun elements and fun elephants in the room that a lot of people, get tribalistic and adversarial about with one another. And, a lot of people, so you get a lot of Christians saying, keep Christ in Christmas, and they get all bent out of shape when people celebrate Yule and stuff. Then you get some people attacking Christians saying, Christmas has nothing to do with Jesus, the way you guys celebrate it, because it's all Yule with a couple of Jesus things thrown in on top. And I want to throw an opinion out here for you guys to think about. And that is one to just fucking relax. Okay. It's not important to school everybody on what the truest version of a holiday is. The way I approach it is Christmas is a Christian holiday. Yule is a pagan or heathen holiday, Saturnalia, all these kinds of things. They are separate and distinct for the simple fact that Christian Christmas is basically Yule, but it's like a fanfic of Yule where Jesus takes the spotlight as the Mary Sue. And if you think of it that way and just let them have that, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I've got no problem with that. I don't see any problem with them celebrating it with Germanic customs or any of that stuff. Doesn't bother me one bit. And vice versa holds true as well. If people don't want to have any Christian iconography whatsoever, that's fine too. Have your Christmas tree, but call it a Yule tree or whatever you would call it. The Tannenbaum, call it whatever you want to call it. Go to your roots and practice that. Is it colonization of Christianity. Yes, Christianity has colonized pagan traditions over and over and over again. It is troubling. It is a pain in the ass for a lot of people, especially when you encounter like hardcore Christians that are telling you that your version of Christmas sucks because it's not Christy enough. And these are the Bible thumping fundies. I got nothing to do with them. I think they suck. They're toxic morons. But Christianity by itself is just another spiritual path, a misguided one in my opinion, at least the way it is prosecuted. But I'm not here to judge other people's spiritual paths. I only judge their actions when they're rooted in those paths. When a Christian comes up to you and says, how can you celebrate this? So they'll call it Christmas. They'll say, how can you celebrate Christmas if you're not a Christian? And I'll say, well, I don't technically celebrate Christmas. Okay. I celebrate a Yule tradition vaguely, using my Germanic roots primarily as the inspiration. So we've got what we call a Christmas tree, but it's not a Christmas tree. We've got presents, we've got wreaths, we've got all this stuff, and all of that is not Christian symbolism at all, in the slightest. It's not even close. There's nothing in the Bible about Christmas trees or any of that crap. So even if you believe in the Bible, it's not in there. So this is kind of like, and props to those Christians that go to church on Christmas Eve and all of that. Props to you. That I suppose is sincere and legitimate. Like I props to you for that. But getting it twisted and saying keep Christ in Christmas and getting bent out of shape when people celebrate it in a more pagan way is just as ignorant and stupid as when pagans go to Christians and accuse them of X, Y, and Z. And in case you can't tell, my view on this whole thing of religion and stuff is not to be tribal and not to, judge one another and all of that crap. I think that's stupid. Okay. People will be like, well, I'm adversarial, so I'm adversarial towards Christians. I thought you were like a Luciferian, Thorne. Doesn't that mean you're adversarial? Being adversarial for adversarial's sake is dumb. It's not productive. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you. Okay. Being a resistor to everything. What are you going to do? Resist everything? No. My form of resistance is to not give a fuck. To just let people live, man. Just leave people alone. And if people aren't leaving you alone, you have every right, just like LaVey would say, if they seek to turn your cheek, I'm going to paraphrase and say it my way. I don't turn my cheek, I turn yours. Okay. That's the difference. So, just relax, right? This is the holiday season. If you are wondering whether you should or should not celebrate anything this time of year or how you can celebrate it without betraying what you believe in, seek your ancestral roots. Even as someone who maybe doesn't practice those ancestral roots as a rule, nothing wrong with that. Your ancestors don't care. It's fun. It's a holiday. If you really want to be adversarial about this holiday, don't buy anything. Don't go out and give in to the commercialization of it. I'm not judging you if you do, but if you really, really mean your adversarial, if you really do mean that sincerely, if you want to be an adversary sincerely, do not fall into the whole commercialization of it. That would be like the most adversarial thing you could do. Now I see people talking about Santa Claus and stuff. Santa Claus, here's the thing. Nothing's real. People saying Santa's not real. Okay. Define real. I think it was Eddie, one of the more recent times, said this, and it was a really brilliant thing to say. When someone says, are the gods real? Are the spirits real? Number one, define real. Number two, with that definition, we can either say yes or no. If you believe in you know, the fanciful story of Santa Claus and a North Pole, and that there's a literal physical being flying around in a sleigh. Yeah, no, that's probably not true. I say probably like the same way that I would say that if I drop this, it's probably going to fall. It's going to fall, right? There's no physical entity called Santa Claus, but Santa Claus as an egregore, as a spiritual principle, as an archetype, is not only real, is not only an entity in the collective conscious that can be accessed. The fact that so many little children believe in it really makes it quite powerful. I'm not kidding. You can do magic with literal Santa Claus and the whole mythology associated with it. Unless we forget that Santa, yes, has been completely corrupted and bastardized over the last 100 years or so, but comes from an old Germanic, European, pagan tradition. Some say he's Thor, some say he's Odin. I prefer the Odin version of the story myself, even though he kind of looks more like a Thor. You know, it's sort of supposed to be a disguise of Odin, and Odin was always known for going around and, disguising himself and doing things so that he would test people, and then he'd give them gifts and rewards and all, you know, he would test people, you know. And so, yeah, I've said this on many streams before, a competent magician, a competent sorcerer, a competent spiritualist should be able to understand that even Santa, look, if you're working with Lucifer, people are like, what? If you're working with Lucifer and you don't know that pretty much everything that people describe as Lucifer is an egregore creation by superstitious Christians, generally meant to demonize Gnosticism and other related things in antiquity. If you don't realize that that's what Lucifer was, that it's basically Gnostic Jesus demonized into Satan form, if you don't realize that, you're not doing your research. You don't realize that Lucifer is not a literal. When I say literal, I mean there is only one reality. That reality is that indescribable, ineffable, unspeakable true self, the divine, the Brahman, whatever the fuck you want to call it, God, whatever. That is the only reality, and that is what you are. That's not just what you're made of. That is what you are. You are God dreaming you're not God. You are God having a human experience, presumably. Or maybe you're some kind of other kin. You think you're a cat or a frog or a demon or something, whatever. You're God having a mortal experience. Okay. It's like having a nightmare or a dream. It's not very different, except the dream is made of the same thing you are. It's like a dream dreaming itself, right? That's one analogy you could use. So this divine self is dreaming that it's human. It's dreaming that it's everything but what it is. And so you can work with any spirit. They're all masks of your higher divine self. This is not hard to realize. It is not a stretch. When you have that transcendental awakening and realize your true self, all of this stuff makes sense. It suddenly clicks perfectly into place. When you go into a really deep state, be it through chemical or meditative practices, you go into a really deep state and the whole world goes away and all that's left is you, and that you is a non-physical, non-identified, egoless, just not even localized, just consciousness, aware of itself, not even in darkness, but in absolute oblivion. There's no darkness nor light. You're just existence itself, aware of itself. When you hit that state, that really, really deep down state, and then transcend all that and then return, as you return, you sort of see the world come back. It's not that it rebuilds itself. There's not like machinery and stuff, but there is a kind of switching on or a return or a landing back or a pulling back. It can feel like when you hit this state, when you transcend everything, you can feel like you're just melting into reality, and reality goes away too. So like you feel like you are a drop of water going back into the ocean, and then the ocean goes away. There is no ocean because the ocean would be a separate thing. It is just you go back into the self, the perfect self, the ultimate self. When you come back out of that and you sort of poke back up as a thing sticking up out of it and look at all this other stuff sticking up out of it, when that happens, you realize that everything is the other side of you. You know, you're having an internal view of this guy, but this guy or girl or whatever, you're having this internal view of your reality, and then you're having an external view of reality, but that external view of reality is just the other side of the self. And it's the same self. It's the same silver throughout. When this happens, you realize that everything in reality is archetypal or enigmatic. So that means that it's not that the absolute self is logical or logos, as maybe the ancients would have said, but it does have a logos in it. And that logos is localized pattern. That localized pattern in the infinite self, the pattern is infinitely complex. It is chaos. It is the original meaning of chaos. When it is mortalized, when you enter a mortal state, you enter into a world of logical patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know, it suddenly has logic to it. That logic is found, inspired by, part of that infiniteness. And everything in it, there's recurring parts in it. Archetypes are, some are specific to humans, some are probably not. We have no way of saying for sure because most of us only have a human experience. We don't know. We don't have memory of any other experience, even though we're having all of these experiences as the universe. We don't remember it. Consciousness is here, localized in this manifestation, and has access only to the memories of this person at this time. Okay? You're only conscious of your memories, not other people's, because right now consciousness is localized in the mortal state. When you transcend that, consciousness is not local at all. Does that make sense? So when you are localized this way, you see the patterns and they recur or reoccur. Lucifer, for example, is an archetypal mask, or a divine mask, I think, as Michael Ford put it. Not that I really, I don't have a problem with him, nor do I ascribe to him. He's just another person with interesting views, and some of them I've looked at. Nothing for or against the guy. He's valid as you want. No commentary. I've never met him, never spoke to him. So I can't give you my estimation of him or his work, but he says something similar. And it's probably from a similar realization, if I had to guess. He probably either intellectually or spiritually realized it, and that inspired and informed a lot of his work. So Lucifer, the fallen angel, the outcast, the divine rebel, the cosmic, anti-hero, the opposite of the demiurge, whatever you want to think of it as, comes in different flavors. There's the Satan version of it. That is the Christian Satan version of it. That is the bad guy version. And then there is the one that we seem to know, which is more of like that Gnostic Lucifer, the Gnostic Jesus, the Gnostic Lightbringer. That's the character that we generally run into. At least that's the one that I run into. That is a mask. It's just one way that archetype manifests in human culture. It's manifested as Enki, as Shiva, as a lot of others, any sort of, and there's differences between them, obviously, but any sort of adversarial, rebellious, trickster, certainly in our modern era, it is associated more with the planetary energy of Venus, but it's not exclusive to that. There once upon a time it would have been probably what we call Neptune, Poseidon, right? Enki, Shiva, Neptune, Poseidon, they're all sort of the same character, just seen through a different cultural lens, and Lucifer could be said the same thing, but we associate it with the morning star. That's more of a Jesus thing, by the way, which is interesting that is the case, which tells you that is the Christian perversion of Gnostic Jesus, okay? Because the Gnostics understood, they believed that Yahweh was the demiurge, and the demiurge was either evil or not good per se, at least misguided, and that Jesus figure was actually an incarnation of Lucifer, and Lucifer was an aeonic being, the counterpart in some traditions to Sophia, wisdom, and Lucifer incarnated as Jesus to awaken mankind and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Jesus, if he really lived, most likely encountered a combination of maybe Platonic mysticism, maybe obviously Jewish mysticism, and probably Hindu mysticism as well. If not, they at least agree on a lot of things, to the point where if you read the Gospel of Thomas, it's almost like reading like certain Buddhist scriptures. It's not too far off. So it's really interesting. So what am I getting at here? You can work with Santa Claus in the same vein. Santa Claus is an archetype. It's a manifestation of an archetype. You can work with that, no problem. What's up, Maiden Liberty? What's going on? Good to see you. You're new to my live streams. That's good to know. We talk about a lot of stuff. What are my general thoughts on Michael Ford? Not much. That's what I was saying before. I don't know much about him. The little bit I've skimmed of his work. See, my problem is, I don't know if I'm just autistic or what. I don't like to like endorse things too fully. Like even people that I like, I'm always a little cautious, because I don't agree with everything that the guy says, but I don't disagree with everything he says. I think that his work is quality, and I think that some of what he says totally resonates. It's not like it's all wrong or anything. It's definitely a valid thing if you want to pick it up. It can work for you, I guess is what I'm getting at. It can work for people. There's things I would have done differently, and there's things I probably would have done basically the same as what I've read from him. So, you know, neither here nor there. As a person, I don't know. I know that he sells stuff from Luciferian Apotheca, and people have very favorable feelings about him, and I can see why. He's a good intellectual guy. I don't know if he's a good person. I don't know if he's a bad person. So I got to just go by what I've seen, and, you know, I would say cautiously optimistic about him. I'd have to meet him to know better. Let's see. Andrew Colt said something very smart. He says, it cannot be one if it is all there is, with nothing else to be compared to. That is correct. So he's talking about the divine itself. That is absolutely correct. I'm sure you've probably heard me harp on that for a long time. This is why I don't call myself a monist, even though monist philosophy and metaphysics are definitely a valid interpretation of what we're talking about. But that singularity, now if you're talking about it as a singularity, okay, so let's do this logically speaking, okay, you can say in Neoplatonism or Gnosticism, because they use basically their Gnosticism is basically like well, Neoplatonism and Gnosticism share a lot in common. They definitely, you know, I'm going to say that Neoplatonism inspired a lot of things in Gnosticism, but Gnosticism goes back further than people realize. It goes back to Egypt. It goes back to, there were other Gnostics besides the Christian Gnostics. The Christian Gnostics were inspired by Neoplatonism a lot. There was a lot of like crossover there. Same thing with Kabbalah. That's just my research. Some people may disagree. There's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of cross-pollination and Plotinus and all this stuff. But when we're talking about like the monad is, by my definition, basically a singularity, but it is the only thing in existence. That singularity has no edge. Like a singularity has no surface area. You guys know that? A singularity, a point, has no size dimension at all. It is sizeless. That's how small it is, right? It has no logical definable edge. If it did, it would have a volume. And if it had a volume, it wouldn't be a singularity. So the monad is a singularity. Now, according to emanationism, which is what Neoplatonism kind of is, it's a form of emanationism, as is Kabbalah, as is Gnosticism. They're a form of emanationism. The monad is at the center and shines its light, right? Its illumination. Because light and illumination, is there a difference? What is it? So the light and its illumination. So the pleroma is the illumination, and it like, you know, almost like via the inverse square law, as that illumination spreads into whatever it's spreading into, the pleroma, if you will, it decreases in intensity and purity until you get to the material world and then the underworld. That's the Neoplatonic cosmology. Now, my issue with that is if the monad is the singularity and all that exists, then everything should be going on inside of it. So really you should turn this around and say that the monad is a singularity and somehow this other stuff is an emanation instead of an emanation. It's like going into itself. Almost like emanating into itself. Sort of like how if you look within, you see consciousness. Well, when consciousness looks within itself, reality emerges. And that's actually kind of the non-dual way of looking at it. When a materialist thinks consciousness is inside, that's why we say look within, right? Because we're all sort of trapped in this material delusion. So we look within and we see consciousness. If you strip everything away that's not real and you strip everything away that you cannot prove, the only thing that is you that you can prove that exists is consciousness. That's it. Consciousness is what you are. Everything else is something consciousness is observing. So we have this feeling like we're going within when we see that consciousness. But from the more lucid interpretation, when you do transcend the material realm, you realize that the material realm is actually what's inside. Consciousness is the totality, and reality as we see it in mortality is a manifestation within that or of that. So consciousness is dimensionless. The material world appears to be dimensioned. The problem is, and this is where it gets really trippy, if you play along and follow what science and cosmology are discovering, space has no dimensions either. Why do I say that if we have an up, down, left, and right? Simple, because there's no edge to space. Space has no length, width, height, right? It's just space. That space is, that we see in the material world, is a reflection of that dimensionlessness of your divinity, of the higher divinity. So when you come to terms with some of these things, a lot of stuff gets completely just BTFO'd. And that's why you can sort of, this is why it's called gnosis. You can know the self. The only thing that you can know for sure is the self. And by self, the problem with that is it's just a word that points at it. The self doesn't mean anything. The self is just a word for that which is aware. That's it. And that's the most you can say. Even that is saying too much. You can't really describe God. This is why in the more mystical, non-egocentric, non-personified, Kabbalistic stuff, which is really good. I don't use it myself. That's why I'm not very knowledgeable on it. What works about it is they realize that God, the reason you can't name God is not because it's a sin to try, or he has a name, or it's a he, or all of that is kind of like, it's secularized metaphysics, the way we understand it through Christianity. When you go to the mystical, esoteric source of all of that, you realize that we're all talking about the same thing. You know, mystical Kabbalah, Judaism, going back thousands of years, even to pre-Jewish times, these mystery schools, they all, shamanic stuff, they all realize the same thing. They all realize that infinite oblivion that is the true self. And then transcending that, it's sort of like how Thelemites and other people realize that we are all gods of our own personal universe. Okay? When you realize that, the rest doesn't matter. And they've all realized it. And all of these traditions teach you that. And that's the beauty of this stuff. You can work with Lucifer as the fallen angel that leads you to that realization, or you can work with Lucifer as a devil that's opposed to Christianity, or you can work with Christ, or you can work with Shiva, or anything. If you're doing it the right way, anything will lead you to the realizations that you need. And from there, the magic happens. Let's see. Let me scroll up and get some comments going here. Where did I leave off? Behemoth X is here. What's up, Behemoth X? I didn't see your early comments. Behemoth X quoting some songs there. I hate Billy Joel, by the way, Behemoth X. I fucking hate him. As a Long Islander, Billy Joel, I'm supposed to like him. I'm not going to say what I really think. All I will say that one of my good friends grew up a couple of blocks away from him, where he used to live on Long Island, and shot at his house with a paintball gun back in the 80s or whatever it was. And I think he said he hit him, but I don't know. This was way back in the day. No, fuck Billy Joel. I hate his music. When I hear his music, I get mad, like, especially like Piano Man or, oh my God, any of that shit. Just like, turn this shit off. I hate Billy Joel. You know, I'm sure everyone thinks he's got great music. I can't stand him. It's like one of those things where it's just, maybe as a person he's fine. I don't know, but I hate that shit. I can't stand Billy Joel's music. Like, if I hear that, I quickly turn it off. Like, I just can't. I don't know. I guess that would be like, I don't know, being from like the deep South and not liking Billy Ray Cyrus or something. I don't know. All right, let's see. So Wyatt says, here's a good question. Is it one or infinite? Do we call it one rather than infinite for the sake of reductionism? I believe that infinity is a large universal constant. So here's the thing. Infinity, zero, and singularities, they have one thing in common. They're irrational concepts. A singularity is kind of like a counter spatial existence. It is a dimensionless point of reality, like a quantum singularity. A black hole has no edge. It's just, there it is. It has location, no edge, no boundary. The boundary we see around it, that black hole event horizon, that's something else. That's not the black hole. The black hole is the singularity in the middle. And it's just a point. Okay? All rational concepts of dimensionality break down. Infinity and a singularity have that in common. Now, people are talking about the number zero. The number zero is just a placeholder. It doesn't actually represent anything real. It can't. Non-existence cannot exist. You are not zero. The divine is not zero, but it is not one. It is also not more than one. This is why it is called non-dual or not two. This is why I prefer the Advaita teaching primarily. That doesn't mean that I ignore the others. It's just that's still my primary inspired metaphysical background. Now, when I say my thing is Advaita, I'm not technically an Advaitin. I don't practice what Advaitins practice. I'm not a Shaivist. I'm none of these kinds of things. Just the pure secular philosophy of non-duality. Like when you take non-duality and secularize it so it's not, so it lacks religious connotation. It is just a realization. It's more of a pantheistic, non-denominational, non-dual metaphysical philosophy. That's what I'm down with. And you can express that however you want. You can express it with Neoplatonism, Kabbalah, whatever you want. Hermeticism. They can all be explored through that Advaitin lens. You don't even need Vedanta, although Advaita Vedanta is the origin. You don't even need the Vedanta stuff. Just what just what the cherry on top. Now I know the traditionalists will say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be a Neo-Advaitin. They're wrong. They're this and that. Fair enough. Neo-Advaitins have their own issues. There's a lot of quackery going on in that. I might even be considered a quack, especially if you go to India and talk to like, real hardcore, Advaitins and stuff. But I guess they'd probably call me a Neo-Advaitin, even though I'm not. I don't classify myself as that. For me, I had my own awakening experience and realized what I am and what you are and what everything is. And everything was informed by that. And then I discovered these traditions that explain it. And I said, that's a really good way of explaining it. And I look at another one, they have a good point too. And it's that parable of the elephant and the blind men. Everybody is touching an elephant. No one can see it. They're all trying to describe it. They're all describing the same truth. And there's similarities between them all, but there's enough differences that no one can come to a pure consensus. But those people who have transcended the delusion and have found the true self, they go, oh, I get it. They're saying it. They're saying it. These are just different ways of saying the same thing. That's all it is. So you can work with any one of those traditions, providing, in my opinion, as someone who has seen the end of the rainbow, if you will, you can work with even dualistic traditions in a non-dual mentality. You can see how duality is a necessary delusion of mortality and where duality comes from through a form of ignorance. When I say ignorance, I don't mean like you're stupid ignorant. I mean ignorance, denial. Think of it this way. Look at the palm of your hand. Why can't you see the back of it right now? Do you have a back of the hand right now? Well, you guys see the back of my hand, but I don't. And even when I'm looking in that video display of it, I'm not actually seeing the back of my hand. I'm seeing what the back of my hand looks like to the camera. I'm not actually seeing the back of my hand. I'm not seeing the inside. All I see is a very, very superficial, two-dimensional facade of reality. I don't see reality. I see a two-dimensional overlay. That's what I see. That's what you see. That's what we all see. We don't see the inside. We don't see the other side. We have a very, very, very shallow perception of reality. So I am ignorant, even of my own self. I am ignorant of 99.99999% of it. I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what it looks like. I can't experience it directly, but I can experience the absolute self directly, without denial, without confusion, without ignorance, very easily. You can too. Some people it takes practice, but the practice is not to see it. It's to stop seeing the other stuff. That's what the practice is. So when you transcend that, you realize everything's oblivion, and this is just a superficial overlay like a desktop operating system, and you can interact with that. You can ignore it. You can treat it like a dream. You can even be lucid and potentially tweak that dream a little bit, or at least that's the feeling you'll get. Because it's not the ego doing it. It's the higher self. It's the will doing it. It's Brahman doing it. It's God doing it. And that is what you really are, having a human experience. When you're having a human experience, it is defined by the ignorance of the truth. That ignorance means that there is some degree of powerlessness, of incapability, of ignorance, of foolishness, of not seeing it and not being able to do it. So this idea of, is it one? Is it infinite? It is neither, and it is both. That is the paradox of the ineffable divine. It is ineffable. You cannot call it consciousness even. Like when I run into, when I look at like science and non-duality, people like Bernardo Kastrup, even Rupert Spira, who I like, they all describe God as consciousness, but describing it as consciousness is too affirmative. Whatever this is, it does exhibit consciousness. Consciousness is part of its nature. Absolutely. But consciousness is an ineffable, irrational concept. We have no idea what consciousness is. This is consciousness. So we got to be careful when we say that God is consciousness. We've got to make sure that we really, really define that consciousness as an ineffable it's awareness. What's awareness? Can you describe awareness in its absolute, like, it's sort of like saying, can you describe a sunset so a blind person who's never seen light before could see it in their mind's eye? I doubt you ever could. So likewise, can you describe awareness to somebody in a way that makes them realize awareness? No, you've got to point at it indirectly. You've got to have them look at it. And that's difficult, because even then, that's an awareness of awareness. It's not actually awareness itself. The awareness of awareness is not awareness. That is a recursive awareness. That's consciousness. Consciousness is a recursive awareness. Awareness by itself precedes that consciousness. And that's the rub. That's the hard part, is transcending everything. If you can just get down to consciousness, pure consciousness, that is the most transcendent state you will experience. Just pure consciousness, aware of only itself. That's top shelf. Everything else is an illusion within that. When I say an illusion, I don't mean that it's irrelevant or not consequential. I just mean it's an illusion. It's illusory. It's superficial. It's superficial over something, but that something is ineffable. You can understand the illusion, but you can't understand what the illusion is covering. Science can only test the illusion. It can't test the supernatural substance that it is. And supernatural is a bad word. It's all nature, but just we'll use supernatural for the edginess. So in the non-dual sense, there is no affirmative or positive statement you can make about what it is. You can't call it one. You can't call it infinite. You can describe it as infinite, but only as a manner of pointing. You can say it's boundless. That's a better word. It's edgeless. That's a better word. I'll describe it as infinite too, but I usually hesitate. I prefer to say it's boundless, timeless. I'd rather use the word less, right, than something affirmative. I'd rather describe it through negation. That's neti-neti. That's apophaticism. That is the only logic that will get you to the divine source of truth, is by negation. When you negate everything that is untrue or can be negated through polarization, you get to the truth. And that's tough. Negation, neti-neti, apophaticism is sort of like, I like how Theoria Apophasis put it, his channel. He describes it as losing a golden needle in a haystack and trying to find it by setting fire to the haystack and then blowing the ashes away until all that's left is that golden needle. That's what we're trying to do with all of our practices. If it's not, you're just in the middle of an ego trip. That's all. Nothing wrong with that. Just understand that's not what, that's not going to lead you to liberation. You have to do the apophatic, the neti-neti. You have to do the negation to get there. And once you do that, everything else will kind of start to fall into place, because you'll have a view, a perspective of reality, which is rooted not in belief or faith, but gnosis, samadhi, realization, direct awareness of what is. Once that happens, you can take or leave everything else and make do with it what you want. All right, let me scroll down. Pardon me, guys. Andrew Colts with another good comment. Logic and reason only get you so far. Patterns seem to be law until they change. Embrace the absurd. Exactly. And I would also say that so the path to spiritual awakening, in Hindu traditions, there's, I forget, 3 or 4 different techniques, methods, and you can use them all or only one. But I'm going to argue that the optimal way that I have found begins with cerebral negation. That is contemplation which negates all the rational arguments. And once those are negated sufficiently, not totally, you can never through logic negate completely. You can only get so far. Once you have negated the majority of objections to the idea of consciousness being what you are, what we call consciousness is what you are, not as a substance, but as a nature. The nature of what you are is conscious. Once you can get down to that intellectually, then doing the transcendental work or chemical work or whatever your door kicker downer thing is going to be, then that's easier. Because now you don't have these stupid denials going through your head saying, this is dumb. How could I be God? How could I be this? You've got to negate all of that shit intellectually so that when you do the actual practice of whatever it is, you can transcend the material. And then you follow it up. Once you've kicked the door down and had that initial Gnostic realization, samadhi, whatever you want to call it, once you've had that realization, then you've got to integrate that, because you come back. The ego dissolves and then it reforms. When it reforms with this new feather in its cap, this new realization. I'm God. And it gets all egotistical and arrogant about it. It happened to me. Sometimes it still happens to me. There's nothing wrong with being a little arrogant or egotistical. That's built into the system. But that can be a stumbling block if you're trying to transcend everything and be released, so to speak. If you're trying to wake up, which is kind of stupid, because you'll wake up when you're damn good and ready. You can't make yourself do it. But if you're enjoying the wake up game, as Alan Watts would put it, which I am, if you're enjoying the wake up game, the way to play it, the goal, then this is how you get there. At least one of the good ways. So once you've kicked the door down, you've realized your non-dual self, you've realized your divine nature, and all of the delusions are fading, then you've got to integrate it into your life day to day. That ego's got to be yoked. That's the meaning of yoga. You've got to yoke the ego, or align the ego, or the persona, or the identity, their avatar, the soul, the spirit, whatever. You've got to yoke that to the truth so that it now operates in that modality. Now, the interesting thing is nothing actually changes. What changes is your attitude, not your actions. Actions will follow, but it's not that you're changing your actions, you're changing your attitude. It's like when they say, like, you know, free your mind, the rest will follow. It's like that. You change your attitude and your awareness of things, your perception of things, the rest will follow. You don't need a code of morality or ethics when you realize everything is divine. You realize that spiders eat flies just the same and they're all God. So that means that there's going to be predators in humans as well that hurt other people. That too, it's not morally wrong, but it is also not wrong to counter them with pragmatic solutions, putting down rabid dogs and stuff. All morality goes away. It becomes an act of sincere compassion to act. And that usually is a non-intervention style practice. Real compassion tends to be non-intervention. You don't try to save the world. You don't interfere. You recognize that you're not interfering even when you do interfere. So many things, like there's so many like almost contrary sounding things, but you realize like not doing anything is no better than doing everything. You have to act naturally with sincerity. That's why sincerity is such a big word to me. It's one of the most important words. So you take logic and reason, you use apophatic or negative or, you know, whatever, you know, word you want to put on it. You use that neti style logic and reason to get to a point where it's sort of like skinning an animal before you cut it up and eat it, you know? Once you've skinned the animal, then you can do the rest. Once you've skinned yourself, once you've skinned and removed the conceptual delusions, then you can go deeper through meditation. And of course, you can do it all at the same time. Then you can start doing practices after which integrate that. And that's where the religions come in. That's where all of these traditions come in. Most of them have built into them both getting there and then what to do with it. So you can go and become a Buddhist or an Advaitin or a Kabbalist or whatever you want to call yourself. And you can do whatever system you want and use that as a way to integrate the truth into your life step by step. Part of what I'm doing is trying to create a system of my own based on what I've done and turn that into something that others can replicate and modify and adapt for themselves. And sort of, you know, Luciferian Hinduism or whatever you want. I have a different name for it, but I'm just being funny, right? It's almost like that. Taking all of that and incorporating it into your life with a combination of theurgy, which combines a lot of different things. Theurgy is a big word. It's got a lot in it. It means working with spirits. It means working with divine energy. It means working with the divine itself and all the mass that it has, and stripping away the delusions and realizing that you are the divine. That's theurgy. But sorcery or thaumaturgy is also part of theurgy, because sorcery is aligning the ego and its desires with the divine and the truest will. It's like Crowley says with "do as thou wilt," right? Not talking about want. He's talking about will. Will and want are not the same thing. They sometimes align and they look the same, but they're not the same. Desire and want and all, and even need, those are not, they don't have anything to do with will. Desire and want could be an act of will, but they themselves are not the will. You can desire, it's like the old saying, wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which gets full first. You know, desire is the wishing, shitting is the will. Will is always fulfilled. Will is always inevitable. Your will is always done. I don't care what anybody says. I didn't get what I wanted, so my will wasn't done. No, bullshit. That's not true. Your will is inevitable. You cannot change your will. Your will is what it is. Your will is causality. Your will is the Tao. Your will is certain. It's just your ego doesn't always understand. Your egoistic identity, your confusion, your ignorance doesn't always recognize that will for its own. Why do you think Christians are so hung up on "do thy will, God," and all that shit? They're really talking, if they understood their own religion and its origin and everything that it really is saying coded, if they understood the coded thing it's saying, that God is the true self. It's not you. You are God too, of course, but you, this is God the same way the person you dream about as yourself is you. It's not really you, right? It's just a projection. It's an avatar of you. It's a reflection of you. The person you see in the mirror is not you. The person you're looking out from is not really you in the sense that that's all you are. It's a reflection of you. Not in a dualistic sense. It's a reflection like the different sides of a coin. It's all made of the same silver. It's all the same thing, just different, again, language fails, different ways of seeing the same thing. So you can practice this any way you want. You can practice it Christianly. You can practice it with any religion you want. You can augment, change, because I have news for you. The origin of pretty much, and I'm saying, you can take this with a grain of salt, but my intuitive interpretation of all spirituality is all of it began with some dude dropping shrooms or having a non-dual realization through some kind of transcendental experience or a near-death experience. They transcended their egoic self. The ego died for a moment, as they would say, which is a nonsense concept, but the ego is subsided for a moment. The true self is revealed. That true self is the divine, and that's the religious experience that starts every single spiritual tradition from antiquity to today, from the cave people to today. That's it. That is the source of all spiritual traditions. And everything else is just cultural metaphors that are layered on top, like a city from ancient times getting demolished and rebuilt and demolished and rebuilt, and just layer after layer and stratification until you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Like Christianity, if you take Christianity as its biblical orthodox self calls itself and describes itself and talks about itself, it is a really overly complicated, again, layer after layer of different religions and traditions and pagan things all layered on top and redone and readapted, because whatever the church does, whatever Abrahamic religion does, it tends to take whatever it sort of germinates in a society, and it takes over all of those things that society is known for and adopts them all and adapts them all. And that's how you get fucking Christmas. Christmas has nothing to do with, I'm just saying, Christian friends, do as thou will, but know that Christmas is not in the Bible. It is not a Christian holiday. It is an appropriation of other people's things. And I forget if it's Galatians or what, but there is a verse somewhere in the Bible, I forget which one it is, that talks about not adopting pagan practices in any way, shape, or form. Virtually every holiday Christians practice these days is an adoption of pagan traditions. And I don't mean that they just use the same day. That would be fine. They use the iconography, the symbolism, the metaphors, all of it. And then they put their deity as the Mary Sue for the fanfic on top of it. There is literally nothing wrong with doing that, but it is what it is. That is what it is. That's what we're doing when we're saying we're Luciferians and we work with Lucifer. We are taking a bullshit myth, worshiping it. If you're worshiping Lucifer, you're a fool. You shouldn't worship anything. You can venerate. I know that some people it's the same word. It's not. You can venerate, honor, love. All that's fine. Worship, in my dictionary, is a submissive act. It is a submission. You don't submit to yourself. That's silly. One might say, well, dissolving ego is a submission. No, it's not. It's like waking up. When you wake up from a dream, is that submission to wakefulness? That's stupid. It's the most ridiculous thing you could say. It's a spontaneous, oh, that's all it is. It's an enlightening thing. It's a release. It's a letting go. It's not a submission to anything. It's a letting go. And it sounds the same because to let go, enlightenment sounds like submission because you're letting go, right? You're letting go of this feeling of control and it sounds like submission, but you're not. Submission means you're submitting to something. There's a subject and object to submission. Enlightenment has no subject and object. It's just, I get it. So worship is not in my dictionary as a good word at all. Veneration, those kinds of words, those are good. It's a little different. It's like when you honor yourself, when you honor other people, when you say, I love you to your wife, that's not submission. That's not even seeing it as equal, especially if you're coming from a non-dual perspective. Your husband, your wife, your pet, your child, you see the, how do I put this? You see the colloquial, the contemporary, the material side of it. It's still there, but deep down inside, you feel like you're talking to your hand. Not all the time. I don't feel that way constantly, but when I am in a proper, reasonably aware state, like when my wife and I are having an argument, at least a portion, if not all of my anger is superficial. Deep down inside, I am yelling at my hand and I'm having an argument with my hand. I don't have a direct sense of control over her, just like I don't have a direct sense of control over my guts, but I know that that's me. Just like I don't always have a direct sense of control over my breathing, but I know my breathing is something I'm doing. Sometimes I do have control over your breathing, right? That's the cool thing about breathing. That's why breathing is such a useful meditative tool, because breathing is both autonomic and something you can control. So you can kind of switch back and forth. You can see how it can be controlled, and you can see how you can let go, and it just does what it wants. And yet that's still you doing it. It's still you that's in control of it, sort of. Control is a bad word, but we're using it anyway. All right, let's see. Maiden Liberty says, what are your general thoughts on Michael Ford? I sort of covered that before. I don't know if you missed it, but I'll give you another question. He said, what books would you recommend for a left-hand path noob? I mean, I have my own books. Self-promotion is kind of a taboo around some parts. I have my own books, but when you're talking about let me ask you, if you're still here, Maiden Liberty, what does left-hand path mean to you? So if you're still here, put that in a comment, and when I read that, I'll know how to answer you. So you tell me what you think left-hand path means, then I'll tell you what I think you might want to read, or maybe what you should think about it. Xander says, congratulations on your subs. Thank you. Thank you, Raymond, for congratulating us. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Let's see. Kinkaku. What is up? I assume that is Japanese. I don't know for sure, but that sure looks like Japanese. Hello, not knowing English, I will review you using a translator when you finish your broadcast. Thank you for your work. I have a request, not knowing how much you will react to this, but I want to, there it is, but I want to ask, are you good at contacting spirits? Oops, it just super scrolled on me. Let me see if I can find that. Sorry about that. I was reading that, and then it scrolled off the screen. Uh-oh, where'd it go? That's a lot of chat that I missed. There we go. Are you good at contacting spirits? People are looking for a way to make a deal with the devil or sell their soul if possible. Then we would like to know what a person should do. Do you conclude a contract? Thanks for your attention. I think you're a very good person. Thank you, Ginkaku. So number one, the selling of souls is a meme. It's not real. Not in the sense that it's presented. You can dedicate yourself egoistically to anything. In that sense, you could sell it, I guess you could say. There is no right or wrong way to do all that, and I don't really condone, advise, or teach that concept. I don't think it's a valid one. I think it's silly. That doesn't mean some people don't benefit from it. When I say I think it's silly, I mean I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's necessary for people. Some people, that's their only way, is to do it that way, and then, you know, sort of adopt that harsh master kind of, you know, I am a servant to XYZ spirit. That is not my way. If you watch my channel at all for any length of time, you see that I oppose that. I am a Luciferian by philosophy, which means libertarian by trade, I guess. I am a Luciferian in the sense that I am not a Satanist. I've never claimed to be a Satanist. And even if I was, Satanism does not contain this whole selling of souls idea. That is a Christian pop culture concept. Okay, that's based on Faustian mythology, that you can sell your soul to the devil and get something. Okay, that's found in certain traditions as part of the pact process. You can make pacts with any spirit you want. But ultimately, you're making a pact with your higher self coming at you in the form of that spirit. That's not to say that spirit doesn't have its own inner experience, potentially. Some spiritual entities I've encountered don't know that they're the divine at all. They're just as dualistic as a lot of the average person running around. Then there's spirits you run into that know that they are part of the divine, that they are, it's basically, as Eckhart Tolle would say, it's source coming at you in the form of that. Me personally, I sort of go both hot and cold with spirit work. You guys may have noticed I haven't worked openly with spirits in a while. That's not to say I haven't done anything with them, but it's sort of like been put on the back burner because I just go right to the source, so to speak. I don't need to have the middlemen of angels and gods and all this stuff all the time. Just sometimes when I feel really egoistic, or when I'm looking for a wow experience, or I can't seem to get through to myself and I need that intermediary because I'm feeling really lost or something, or I need something that symbol contains. Sometimes the spiritual entities come through as just imaginary constructs of my mind. Other times they come through as self-aware sentient beings. Which one is which depends. Technically, they're inspired by the same archetypal source every time. So whether it's got its own self-aware nature or it's just a drawing on the wall that I'm talking to and imagining is real, doesn't matter. The results should be at least congruent. They might not be exactly the same, but they should be congruent if you're doing it right. Most really good spiritual practitioners that I know utilize a method E.A. Koetting talked about in Evoking Eternity, I think. That's one of the reasons why I knew he was at least that much legitimate. You know, I think he's quite legitimate, but I'm just saying, I think that was one of the things that turned me on to him was when I read that. He talked about role-playing sort of. He didn't use it in those words. He said, you've got to, I'll see if I can remember, you've got to imagine, you've got to give the spirit a vessel to fill. So you've got to give it something. It could be a physical idol, it could be a mental idol, or both. I like to use both when possible. So I'll use a physical idol and then I'll visualize it in my mind doing all these things. Or I will picture the spirit in the room and I will just role play as if it's real and just lose myself in that role play until I don't know I'm role playing and I feel like I'm talking to an imaginary friend that's real. And then weird shit starts happening, paranormal stuff starts happening, synchronistic miracles start happening. And I know that I'm encountering something that is self-aware. Whether you want to call that an alternative personality of mine that I'm talking to, schizophrenia, whatever you want to call it, I don't care because it works. Doesn't matter to me so long as I don't become superstitiously theistic and stupid about it. That means I'm maintaining a rational relationship with it. If I suddenly go, Lucifer is a real fallen angel that was cast out by God because he was just too cool and rebelled against the demiurge, and that's why that's madness. To take myth literally is madness. To read the Bible literally is madness. That's one of my personal definitions of madness. And it's a spiritual madness. It's not a literal madness in the mortal sense. It's a spiritual madness. It's delusion. It's dualistic delusion compounded by faith and belief. There's a reason why so many religions, particularly, interestingly enough, Abrahamic religions in particular, demand faith, because they're not telling you the truth. They want you to believe a lie. And so they say, you won't have any evidence for it, so believe it or else you go to hell. Wow, that's some bullshit. If you can't know God directly, you're being lied to, my friend. Whoever you are, you're being lied to. They are using you. You can know God just like you know yourself because it's the same person. The first time I realized that without realizing the non-dual reality of it was when I was about 19 or 20, laying in bed depressed about stuff and thinking about things and wrestling with the whole atheism versus theism argument. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, well, if there is no God, then what's above me? If there's no God, then I'm God of my life, aren't I? That's an interesting thought. And the rabbit hole just got deeper from there. What are my thoughts on chaos magic, DH? Depends on what you mean by chaos magic, Maiden Liberty. If you're talking about Osmond Spare's stuff, I think it's an okay way of doing things. My problem with chaos magic as practiced by the community in general is this: they have a very ridiculous idea that their conscious mind can control their subconscious mind. And the reason I call that kind of silly is because, you know, where does the impulse to control the subconscious mind come from, except for from the subconscious mind? So the idea that it's the conscious mind, you know, it's a dualistic mentality. It is a putting the cart before the horse kind of thing. It's kind of goofy in that I am going to command my subconscious to do what I want. Well, where did that command come from? Where did the impulse for that command? Where did your impulse come from to do the magic? I am going to command my will to do what I want. Does that sound ridiculous to anybody else but me? I want you to think about that for a minute. Where does the will to compel your will come from? If it is not your will to do it at all, how do you will yourself to do it? Isn't that stupid? So this is my main sticking point with what is generally passed. Now, I know chaos magic means different things to a few different people, but that is the more official, formal meaning of chaos magic in a lot of people. It's to do X, Y, and Z, enter the Gnostic state, and poof, shit happens. You know, you're bypassing your conscious filter with whatever technique you're using, be it ritual or a sigil. And by bypassing this conscious filter, you get to the subconscious and tell the subconscious what to do, and you give the universe commands that way. That's why I don't call myself a chaos magician, although I do apply certain chaos principles in terms of I am not theistic, I am not religious, I don't believe in superstition, I'm not dogmatic. I work primarily with what I know, and then everything else is a thematic overlay that allows me to just integrate what I know. That's the secret, okay? It doesn't matter what your overlay is. If it works for you, it's fine. But that overlay is not causing anything. It's just a way to ease into something. It's like you're going to go to a party, and it's a costume party, and you can either wear your regular clothes or you can fit in with a costume. Either way, you're going. And it's kind of like that. You can wear whatever costume you want. You can put whatever costume you want on this party. And eventually, at the end of the party, you take your mask off and everybody sings, you know, it's like a costume ball. You take your mask off at the end, everybody reveals who they really are. That's kind of what we're talking about. And all these different traditions are like that. They're all different costumes you can wear. Or you can wear no costume and just go Zen or something. That's fine too. And pure Zen is completely superficial-less. It has no superficiality to it. Perfect, true, pure Zen is just, oh, I'm consciousness, done. What's for dinner? Life goes back to normal almost immediately. The superficiality is like, whatever. I don't need to wear the trappings of a Buddhist or anything else. I get it. I'm done. It's that simple. It doesn't have to be anymore. You can just go, I am that, and done. Once the realization hits, you can do whatever you want. You can live your life as you could be a freaking accountant and go back to work every day and just go, these numbers are me. You don't need practices. You don't need religion. You don't need gods or demons or rituals or any of that crap. You can just know. And that, for a lot of people, is plenty. So what you guys are interested is in the trappings a lot of the time. A lot of what you guys are interested in is the edgy trappings or the spiritual trappings or the Buddhist robes or the satanic, you know, stuff. And that's fine. But you gotta know the substance of the coin before you worry about what's stamped into it. And you realize that it's all the same silver. You can make the coin any denomination you want. You know, that's the essence of these traditions. Now, chaos magic as like being not constrained by a specific system or tradition, that's sort of where I'm at. That's the kind of chaos magician I am. I'm not constrained by any one tradition. I look at the whole world of spirituality and I see what they're all saying and what they're agreeing on and what they're disagreeing on. And I find what works for me and what symbolism and cultural metaphors I like. And then I apply them to my life. And that's my chaos. Perfectly fine. And at some point, because it seems to have some popular resonance with people, I'll put that out in the form of books occasionally, talking about the way I do it. And people enjoy it. And they use it. And sometimes they benefit, and sometimes it ruins their life. And that's not my problem. What's up, Alpha? Good to see you. I'm slowly working my way down. Jockster's here. Who is high? What's up, hi, Jockster? Let's see. Patrick Ritter. Hello, Patrick Ritter. LVX Light is here. True will equals Dharma in Buddhism. Yeah, I could see that. I kind of like it as the Tao. So like there is the Tao. Your personal will is the Tao. It is an eddy in the greater Tao, if you will. It is a microcosm of the greater Tao. But the greater Tao is you too, right? And that would be the Dharma, in my opinion. They're sort of the same thing. I know that there's probably some differences if we're going to really split hairs, but I treat them the same in my own philosophy, and that's that. I don't really worry about it. I think that sometimes we argue about terms too much, but sometimes not enough, you know. It just had an auto scroll moment. What did I miss here? Let me scroll down. It's funny because like I am noticing that like the chat bubble on the stream will sort of not do anything for a while, and then suddenly a whole bunch of stuff will pop up. So Andrew Colts asks a very good question. He says, will divinity is timeless and ineffable, but how would it dream of something other than formlessness? If there is no such thing to use as reference, it isn't a mind, I'm aware, but I'm perplexed. All right, so here's the thing. Take the word formlessness. It is just a pointing finger placeholder for something that is indescribable. When we say formless, we don't mean it doesn't have form in it. We're saying that its nature is formless. Think of it like how do I describe this? I've put it to you guys this way before. This is an analogy, and I want you guys to play with it in your minds for a minute. I'll use one that's maybe a little bit more relatable, because when I say like a number line from 0 to infinity, that helps, but let's use pi, okay? Pi is an irrational number, and it is considered to be infinite because no one, even though people have gone to several million decimal places, no one has ever figured out what pi means. Like no one's ever finished pi, right? So the idea is within the number pi, 3.14, blah, 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 somewhere within the value of pi is a number which corresponds to a computer code that could run all of reality. But the number itself is irrational, meaning it is formless. The 3.14 is just the whole number part. The whole of the number of pi is irrational. It is a formless number. It is like the definition of formlessness. Its form is formless, but within formlessness can be found all form. So the nature of divinity is formless, but within that formlessness is all form. Or should we say, better yet, the inspiration for all form, because we don't see the form. We see its inspired result. We see its superficial overlay. So it's not something you got to wrap your mind around. It's actually quite rational. It's just, it's not something we're used to dealing with in our everyday life. Imagine it like an infinite Rorschach inkblot, or an infinite random spattering of paint on a wall. Or an infinite slab of marble of infinite dimensions with no edges. Within that slab of marble, the slab of marble has no form. It is just everything. It's infinite. It's eternal. It's meaningless. But within that slab of marble, there might be little figures that look real. Like somewhere in that slab of marble is a little blotch that looks just like D.H. Thorne, and consciousness is centered on that little blotch, thinking it's D.H. Thorne right now. That's a two-dimensional static thing, but that's a good analogy. So reality is formlessness, but within reality can be found all the patterns of form. And that is what manifests in our little two-dimensional reality that we encounter. That's what we're manifesting, is the form of formlessness, the forms within formlessness. This is the original meaning of the word chaos, or chaos, or Brahman, or any of these words that sort of point to that same ineffable void quality. It's not a void of nothingness. It is a void of no thingness. There is the void is no thing, but within the void, springing forth out of primordial chaos, come all the gods. What does that mean? If you take that literally, you're a fool. It's symbolic. Primordial chaos is the only thing that is real. Everything else is an illusory highlighting, like taking a spotlight, selectively picking out patterns and focusing only on those. Primordial chaos has no form. It's called the gap. It's called the void. It's the abyss. But when we say that, we don't mean it's zero emptiness. We mean it's empty of form. We mean that it is like the most magnificent tie-dye you've ever seen. Just a total random splatter of possibility. And wherever consciousness is located and pinpointed and looking at, like this, you get form. You get substance, you get reality as you experience it, but that's not real. It's just a snapshot, a very finite snapshot. And that snapshot exists as a perspective of a boundless, formless, eternal, timeless, all of these words. It's just a single pinpoint. It's a singularity looking at the totality of itself. So of course there's a multiverse. I can't wait for them to finally stop hemming and hawing and realize that the multiverse is real. No matter how you cut it, there is a multiverse. It's not, to me, like, okay, you could say it's a belief, but it's a belief that is, how do I put this? It is a belief that is inspired by a knowing. Because when you transcend the material and go into that deep, deep self, there's no boundary, there's no border, there's no edge, there's no time. It's timeless, it's eternal, it's born, it's formless, it is all these things. All of these ineffable qualities of infinity, different infinities stacked upon infinities. It is an endless expanse of oblivion in which anything can be. When we look out into the universe, we don't see an edge, and we never will. We see an edge of what we can see. Like you can't, like your headlights only go so far in the dark, but that doesn't mean there's nothing on the other side of those headlights. There's an event horizon, yes, in space and time, because we are localized in the here and now, but the here and now is just an illusion. The here and now is not a place or a thing. It is just a point of reference. In boundless eternity. And that boundlessness stretches not just in the dimension of space, not just in the dimension of time, not just in the dimension of X, Y, or Z, but in all dimensions, because dimensions are just a construct of relativism. Up, down, left, and right have no meaning in the absolute reality of whatever this is. Up, down, left, and right only have a reference because of where we are in this specific moment. Without consciousness being present in this little, and I say it's like a spherical bubble because your conscious awareness is not an instantaneous snapshot. There's a fuzziness to it because otherwise you wouldn't see things moving. You like if you were just existent in a now moment and that there would be, it would just be frozen. You exist in a blur of now. That now blur is a spotlight of consciousness localized within eternity, within infinity, within boundlessness, all these words that are good and bad to use. It's just a little snapshot pinpoint spotlight on a little tiny part of something that has no dimension. You could even say that the here and now is dimensionless too, if you really think about it. Because you can always get smaller and more brief in duration than the now that you experience. The now, the here and now that you experience, to the best of our technological ability to measure, is roughly somewhere in the middle of what we can measure and conceive of. So when we look at the universe, okay, the universe appears, so the observable universe is X, Y, Z in size, but the theoretical universe is probably infinite. According to our best calculations of everything that we do to try to determine the size and shape of the universe, it is most likely topologically flat. And if it's topologically flat, that doesn't mean it's infinite in size. There are ways for it to not be infinite in size, yet be topologically flat. But the simplest inference is that it's infinite in size. It's certainly many orders of magnitude bigger than the observable universe, almost certainly big enough for this universe to repeat at least once. What do I mean by that? Look up Max Tegmark and his 4 different types of multiverse. We, at the minimum, live in a type 1 multiverse. At a minimum, we probably live in all of them to some degree. All of them are probably true. They're probably all nested within each other. An infinity of infinities, if you will. If you go far enough in any direction, you will run into yourself again, either because it repeats or it wraps around, because there's only so many ways matter and energy can be configured before they repeat. If the universe is big enough, and it is, you will come back around and then smack yourself one way or the other, however you like to look at it. It's either you again as a repeat, or it's you and you just come around to yourself. Either way, it's the same thing. You also have the time dimension. Oh, excuse me, we're not done with scale. You can do the same thing with the smallness. And people say, well, you can't get small in the Planck length. No, we can't conceive of anything small in the Planck length. It doesn't mean that spatial dimension can't go smaller. It just means that anything that exists smaller than the Planck length would be immediately a singularity of a black hole. Anything we can conceive of. Any kind of field, matter, energy, whatever, would just be, boop, just instantly black hole itself, because it would be it would be well within itself. But the actual dimensionality of space, what does it even mean? Space has no dimension. Space is dimensionless. It is we who gives dimensions to space. This is the problem I have with certain materialist, empiricist type of people, is that they assume that their assumptions are reality. When reality, the only reality you can know for certain is consciousness. Everything else is an assumption you put into it. You are having a conscious experience. That much is undeniable. That is the one thing you can know beyond a shadow of a doubt. You don't even know if this is you, because it's not. You can transcend this and just be consciousness. Everything else can be stripped away and you can still be there. What are you then? When there is no body and no name and nothing to ascribe to yourself, just a presence of conscious awareness. What the fuck are you? You're God, idiot. That's what you are. That's it. Everything else is a manifestation of yourself reflecting upon itself. It's a dream dreaming of itself. That's what this is. And so what is the inspiration for that? There are certain mysteries, I got to admit, that have no logical or rational explanation. This in Advaita, in Hinduism, in Buddhism, there's all these different traditions that understand this, and they use analogies like a knife can't cut itself, a tooth can't bite itself, an eye can't see itself, and so on. God cannot rationally know itself with rationality. It can only know itself directly as itself. Sight is known as sight. Sight cannot see itself. Think of that. Sight cannot see itself, but you can know what sight is. Just look. That is sight. But sight cannot see it. Can you see sight? Of course not. You're experiencing sight. Sight is a perception. It's a conscious perception. It is a perception happening in consciousness. It is a form of consciousness. So, my answer to you, besides all that gobbledygook I just said, go find whatever your favorite method is. Transcend all of this delusion and just exist as consciousness in the moment. You can do the Zen Satori way, where you're just kind of, fading out and everything goes into a singular blur and your thought ideation just fades as a noise in the background and you are just consciousness being conscious. That is enough. You can go further and go into deep samadhi or gnosis, where you transcend all of the delusion and you're just consciousness with nothing except consciousness to be conscious of. That's a trip. When you are just conscious aware of itself, that's real ego. That is like top shelf ego death. You don't get any deeper than that I know of. Some people might, but when it's just conscious of consciousness, It's like a mirror looking at itself. It's ridiculous. How do you get any more how do you get any more deep than that? So you can transcend all this mental chatter and just go to the realization it is. When you go to that realization that it just is, you let go of a lot of hangups. It's like a dreamer without a body to dream, you know? And like all dreams, though, all dreams are inspired by the nature of the dreamer. This reality, whatever form it is inspired by so the manifest world is inspired into manifestation by the unmanifest world. Consciousness manifests the material world out of consciousness. It's recursive as hell. But that's why I say it's a mirror looking at itself. What happens when you put two mirrors facing each other? Well, you get an infinite, you get an infinite mirroring, right? It goes like a tunnel. You get like a tunnel effect. Well, that's basically time and dimensions right there, isn't it? The Big Bang was just consciousness looking at itself. Bang, reality just appeared. Poof. That's all. So we have the big and the small, and we also have the time dimension. You can have a multiverse just because of time. If time is just a dimension, not a thing, a substance, or a flow, if time is just a dimension that consciousness can travel in, just like space, then time theoretically has no dimensionality to it whatsoever, really. That is to say, no boundary dimensionality. It's like a singularity again. It has no before, beginning, after. It's just time. It's just a dimension that consciousness can. So if that is the case, there was before the Big Bang. We don't have no way of measuring before the Big Bang because all the processes that we think of, that example time, that give us examples of time, the movement of matter, energy, atoms and molecules, all that shit, didn't exist yet. But in that singularity state before the Big Bang, there was a before. What was there before that singularity? Well, we know something was there. We just don't know what it was. Well, what if it was another universe? The Kali Yuga story, all that stuff. Like here we are in the Kali Yuga. What if it's the Yuga cycles? What if it's all that stuff? What if the universe is cyclic? What if it isn't? Doesn't matter. What if there is just one infinite universe of dimensionality, infinite dimensionality in all directions, both space and time? What the hell would that look like? There's no way to know. You could only know it here and now. And that's what you're doing. One of the most difficult parts of this, after realizing it, is integrating it, because the egoistic self is really disillusioned, because you realize that this egoistic self that you're identified as is just one of an infinite number, not only of different ego identities, but of ego identities just like you, but a little different. There's so many D.H. Thornes within the divine that it's silly that I lay claim to just this one. They're all me. They're all you. All of those little machine elves you might see on a DMT trip. I haven't tried that yet. But all those little machine elves you might see on a DMT trip, they're you too. Your wife is you. Your husband's you. Your child's you. Your dog is you. All of it is you. Just another form you are taking. And that can actually be depressing if you're still in an ego-embedded state. When you're in an ego-embedded state, that turns into a nihilistic realization like Wyatt gets all the time. If you read what Wyatt says, he gets very nihilistic about realization. Instead of being set free by the idea that he's all of this, he gets very nihilistic about it not being real, or he's not this, or none of this matters. Like, who fucking cares? The fact that it doesn't matter means you're free. Do what you want. Let go. Let go of this idea it has to have meaning, or that you have to exist to matter. Let it go. You're dreaming. Let the dream be fun. Even if you're getting stabbed in the eye with a soldering iron. Thank you, Christopher Walken. Even if you're getting stabbed in the eye with a soldering iron, you are in the Garden of Eden having the ballsiest trip of your life because you ate that fruit from the tree of wisdom, life, and death. the tree of knowledge. You ate from that tree, and that was basically the psychedelic experience of the gods, and you fell asleep, and you're tripping balls dreaming that you're not God. Enjoy it. That's why you're here. Even when it sucks, you're here to... Enjoyment doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be fun all the time. Like when you play a video game, is it fun if you can't lose? It's fun when you have a challenge. Life has challenge for that reason. Life has failings and shortcomings and anxiety and depression because of that. Magic is just another way to enjoy it. Sorcery is just, whether it works or not, even if it doesn't work or even if it does, it shouldn't matter. Who cares? Do it anyway if you like it. I love, just from an aesthetic perspective, I love some of this shit. And so I do it because I love it, not because I think it will necessarily bring me anything. And when it seems to bring me something, then a mystical truth of myself is revealed. I realize my divine will was made manifest through the doing of the ritual. It didn't cause anything. It was just a paradigm gate which allowed me to experience that new paradigm of experience. That's all. And it could be something as simple as, I jokingly say, pissing clockwise in a toilet versus counterclockwise, or doing a full-on ritual, or looking up folk magic and doing what they did. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. Do it your own way or no way or every way. That's the chaos side of me speaking. And if you look, you'll find patterns in math and science that all point to the same things I'm talking about. It's pseudoscientific, admittedly, what I do. Admittedly, what I do is a form of pseudoscience, but I'm very respectful of the science and very respectful of the metaphysics, and I see where they're congruent. I see where they agree. And I see that where they disagree, they don't really disagree. It's just that science has not yet, well, science as we see it, scientism, which I'm going to call it scientism from now on. Fuck science. It's a religion now for a lot of people. Scientism has its own ego, has its own egregoric ego associated with it. That scientism ego egregore believes in itself. It tells itself that that's what it is, and so on. And it's very dogmatic about itself. Actual science is just a tool. Science is just a tool. It's a tool of investigation and measurement of what is measurable. That's it. It doesn't tell you philosophical truths. In fact, I said this on a recent stream, philosophers make really good scientists, like metaphysicians make really good scientists, but scientists, people who are scientists first, make terrible philosophers and terrible metaphysicians. You look at someone, what's his name? The guy who replaced Carl Sagan. Black dude, what's his name? I can't think of his name all of a sudden. I do enjoy his content. What the hell's his name? Does anybody know his name? I feel dumb. I gotta look it up. Why don't I'm getting like a brain fart. Like, what was his name? Neil deGrasse Tyson. Excuse me. So Neil deGrasse Tyson, when you watch him, his mastery, at least, wouldn't even call him very good scientists. There's better ones. Like a lot of these science communicators are actually not usually the best scientists. They're more general and they know a lot, but they don't really do it. They're just kind of communicators for it. It's kind of like Bill Nye the Science Guy. He's not really a scientist. In fact, Dolph Lundgren's more of a scientist, ironically enough, than Bill Nye the Science Guy. He's just an actor who likes scientific content. Neil deGrasse Tyson, I guess, is a scientist, but he's more, in some ways, he's more like Bill Nye. Anyway, Neil deGrasse Tyson is a terrible philosopher. Terrible. I watched him talk to Joe Rogan about psychedelics, and his attitude about it was just so dogmatic, so shallow, so superficial, and rooted in the stereotypes and things that are just not true. And I haven't even done them, and I know that what he's saying isn't true. He is a terrible metaphysician, a terrible philosopher, because he is an Aristotelian mathematician communicator. That's what he is. He's a scientist. He's a priest of scientism. He is dogmatic, and he is a terrible, terrible philosopher and metaphysician. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's memorized. He believes in what he's talking about. Knowledge and belief, as the last stream when Siege was talking to me, knowledge and belief are not the same thing. True knowledge has nothing to do with belief. It is a pure, in the moment, Gnostic, boom, that's what it is. Belief is an after the fact. It's a commentary. Faith is even worse. Faith doesn't even have to do with proof. It is literally just you believe because you're told to believe. You insist. Faith is a form of insistence. It's not a form of anything else. It's a form of I insist even though I don't know. I've illustrated it simply before as this. Here is so I believe this will fall. And I have faith that if I let it go, I believe that it will fall. Now I know in the moment when it's right here in the middle of falling, as it's falling, that is knowledge of falling. Now that it has landed in my hand, I know it's in my hand. But I don't know really how it got there. Even though I remember seeing it falling, that is a belief because it's not the present reality. The present reality is knowledge. Present reality is knowledge. Reality right now, my knowledge of reality is here. My belief is that it will fall. Knowledge of falling. Knowledge of here. Belief that it fell. You see how the relationship works? Gnosis, knowledge, is an in-the-moment thing. Can't exist anywhere else. True knowledge is only here and now. So people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, they don't know reality. They believe in reality. They have a belief of reality, and they're not present in reality. They don't see reality. They see a belief about reality. They exist in a world of symbols and belief, not in reality. And that is one of the pitfalls of that Aristotelian, nothing wrong with Aristotelian, like it's a great technology, it's a great tool, but to live in an Aristotelian bumping particles, mathematical symbol world is so far removed from the actual reality that it's terrifying to someone like me who knows it. When I say terrifying, I don't mean like, oh my God, it's just, I would not want to go back to that. I've lived in that and it's not cool. It's hopeless. It's boring. It's depressing. It's not real. You're living in a delusion when you live in that world. And they're going to say, you're saying science is delusion, but it's provable. I'm not saying it's not provable. I'm not saying that science doesn't work. I'm saying that to live in that view is delusion. Here's a better analogy. When I play a video game, I know the rules of that video game. I believe in the rules of that video game. Those rules are provable, but I know it's just a game and it's not real, right? That's what I'm getting at. Science is like the rules of a video game. Science is like playing a video game and figuring out where the borders of the world is and what happens when you throw, a +1 lightsaber at a stormtrooper. You know what it does. You have beliefs about what it does, but reality is the throwing of the lightsaber. It is the doing. It's the realization that it's just a game. Even calling it a game is saying too much, because that too is a form of assertion. Even that's not accurate. That's just another kind of belief. So being present in reality, to have full gnosis of reality in the moment, whatever form it's taking, that's like a Zen way. To transcend that illusory thing, that is a deep transcendental way. That's true full samadhi and gnosis. That's even some ways deeper. Some would say that there's no difference. Like a good Zen guy would say that there's no difference between that Satori, Zazen kind of whoosh that you get and gnosis and deep samadhi, because gnosis and deep samadhi, when you go into that fully transcendental state, that's just another way that reality looks. And this illusion is just another way that reality looks. It doesn't matter which one you see, so long as you recognize the self, the ultimate void, the self. You recognize that, you're done. The game's over, so to speak. You're playing New Game Plus with all the stuff you picked up along the way. I love the video game analogy. It's a good one. All right, I've been ignoring the chat, guys, so let me work my way down. Max Avery's here. What's up, brother? Insane the membrane. Didn't see you before. What's up, brother? Let's see. Pentagrass says 93. Boy, I'm way in the back here. Let me I've been ranting for a little while, so I missed some stuff. Yeah, Patrick Ritter brings up you can analyze words with geometry. Yep. There's a lot of cool things that happen, you know? That's because language is symbolic, and it's symbolic of something that is divine, and this divine is the source. And it can correspond to numbers, it can correspond to archetypes, anything. There's a lot of correspondences because that's how it works. It's a lot of echoes of the same thing. It's a lot of ways of looking at the same thing. But to know the thing directly transcends numbers and forms and archetypes, etc. All right, let's see. Andrew Colts asked a good question. He's asked a lot of good questions today. What makes consciousness different from awareness? I'm not sure if you figured it out based on what I was saying, but consciousness is an activity of awareness. It's awareness aware of something. Excuse me, it's awareness aware that it's aware of something. So pure awareness is not consciousness. Here's a good illustration between awareness and consciousness. When you go to sleep tonight, you are no longer conscious of your body, your environment, anything else that's going on. But you are still aware of your body and of reality around you. How do I know that? Because if I sneak up on you in the middle of the night with a bucket of cold water and throw it at you, you are still aware enough of your reality that when that water hits you, you return to consciousness. So awareness is not the same thing as consciousness. You are still aware even when you're dead ass unconscious. And I would argue that you're still conscious probably too. You're just not present in that. Your consciousness is not present in that embodied thing. Your consciousness might be off in another dimension or another reality. That might even be sort of where dreams come from, when consciousness returns to this body and blah, blah, blah. There may be some resonance. I don't know. There's a lot of I don't knows going on, a lot of speculation here. Dreams, it seems to me that our perception of reality is based more on memory than anything else. We like to think that our reality in the here and the now and the moment is the active perception of what's really happening. But really, when you think about it, if we're coming at this from like the material ground up perspective, and we look at the world and look into consciousness, we see that consciousness is aware of the activity of the brain after the brain has processed it sufficiently that it's formed a holistic picture of it. There are several microseconds, several milliseconds between clapping of the hand and all of the sensory stimuli that went with it. So when I clap my hand and I'm aware of it, there's a measurable gap between when the actual clap occurred and when I'm consciously aware of it. Something like 0.02 seconds or something like that. Everybody's a little different. Like I think it can go from like 0.01 to 0.1 or something like that. There's like a certain, tenth of a second, hundredth of a second. So there is a delay. And by the time all of that shit has been processed by the brain and you're consciously aware of it, that's the past. You're only conscious of the past, but you're aware of all of it. You're aware of the past, but you're consciously aware in the present of the past. Does that make sense? It's kind of confusing. I understand. So awareness exists not independent. When I say independent, I don't mean like separate. Consciousness is the base state. Did I say conscious? I meant awareness. Awareness is the base state. Consciousness is an activity of awareness. Awareness, aware of itself, that recursive thing is self-consciousness. It's self-awareness. Awareness aware of something is still self-awareness, but awareness aware of something is not consciousness. Awareness aware that it is aware, that is the sentient consciousness that we're talking about. I think, therefore I am. I am conscious, therefore I am. That's consciousness. But awareness is what is aware of both. Awareness is aware of consciousness. Consciousness is aware of itself. It is like the ultimate Klein bottle, right? It just goes into itself. That's what consciousness is. It's awareness. It is the divine aware of itself. That's consciousness. So awareness is a form, consciousness is a form of awareness, and awareness is part of the intrinsic nature of the absolute, of the divine, of the Brahman, of the God, of whatever. Just like illumination is an intrinsic attribute of light. Same concept. So in a sense, consciousness is an activity of awareness, not the other way around. What's up, Crackbite? I'm a little bit delayed here, so if you're not here anymore, thank you for coming. Atropa asks, what is it called when I go into the blackness without any mental chatter or visions? Is that regular meditation? That is a form. I mean, I go there quite a bit, but at some point you even lose the blackness. There is no blackness. It's blindness. It's absolute blindness of all sensory everything. And it's just consciousness, just awareness aware of itself. I can't explain it any better than that. There are no words for it. And it's not easy to do without a little assistance from some of our good friends in the medicinal world. It can take other people lifetimes to do it, because it's really hard to just be. It's actually easier to hit that Satori state than it is that absolute just consciousness state. That's very difficult, because you're really embedded in your sensual experience. And I would argue it's not necessary to do. I will say that when it's done, then all sense of doubt is removed, but it's not necessary. It's just a really powerful thing. Jockster says, hair up Thorne has a sophisticated edge, but hair down Thorne is elegantly badass. Yes. You know, sometimes I do miss having a full head of hair, just because, I don't know, I think it looks cool when one side's down, but I know I would probably look badass with both sides down the way it used to be back in the day. It's just, I feel, when I have too much hair on my head, I feel hot and I feel gross, and it doesn't feel right, you know? Having my hair down just feels like janky sometimes. It really feels better to have it up, but I can't deny that I feel cooler with it down. Atropa says, yes, let's go. I don't remember what movie that is where Christopher Walken did that. That was Joe Dirt. That's where the soldering iron comment came from. Yeah, Eddie, Wyatt quoted Eddie, and he's quoted him about the thing about tomatoes. Here's the thing with what he said. That's the D&D explanation of knowledge, like intelligence versus wisdom. There's actually a better description of it. Knowledge is the facts and bullshit. Wisdom is transcending the bullshit and knowing the self. Wisdom is always, the seeker is always seeking themselves. This sounds like a self-help thing, but it's actually bigger than that. The seeker, when they finally find the truth, they found themselves. And I can't put it any better than that. You had me at astral clap. I like that, Hecka. Why what you see in the 3D space of a Klein bottle is not actually the Klein bottle, because you can't simulate the way that the loop curves into itself. When you look at that, there's actually a line separating the two parts. It's there. It's an imperfect picture. A Mobius strip in some ways illustrates hyperdimensionality better, because a Mobius strip is a three-dimensional object that basically analogizes higher dimensions, because higher dimensions would be a little bit like a Mobius strip to our perception. So a four-dimensional object, a four-dimensional Mobius strip would look like a three-dimensional Mobius strip, and so on. So that's why Mobius strips are really good topological design, because you can really get a feel for what higher dimensionality is like. It's trippy, but it's obvious. And then when you go past that into dimensions you can't see or conceive of, you just apply that same kind of inference. And even though you can't visualize it, you can sort of gnostically comprehend it. That's the cool thing about this, the hyperdimensional geometry stuff, is even if you can't intellectualize it, in the sense that, when I say that, you can intellectualize it, like you can come at it a priori style. When I say you can't intellectualize, I mean you can't mentally visualize it, but you can comprehend it. Like you can feel it, like you can get it. You can gnostically get it. You can have knowledge of it. You can not visualize it, but you can visualize what it's not, right? Does that make sense? Like it's trippy as fuck. And that's why I really enjoy hyperdimensional concepts. I've actually, in my old work, I actually made more use of hyperdimensionality to try to explain, at least from one way of looking at things, what spiritual entities are and how magic might work and all this kind of stuff. Is that spiritual entities just exist in a different dimension that is coterminous with ours, and they can communicate with us, but they do it sort of like the way we would communicate with people living in Flatland. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. Flatland is a really cool book. And Planiverse being the more contemporary version of Flatland. Look those things up. I love Planiverse the best because they actually really hit like a spiritual angle at the end, and I thought that was brilliant. And if you have, Planiverse is cool. It's like a weird, like it really hits all the nerd boxes for me. It checks them all, because you've got computer stuff, you've got almost like ecology stuff. It's just like total, it's like a whole package. If you haven't read Planiverse, please do. You'd really like it. Especially you, Wyatt. I think you'd love Planiverse. Crack bite. I think you're thinking of Cousin It. So you've got like a full mop of hair like I used to. That's how I used to be. If I could find, there's some old pictures of me somewhere. I put them on Discord a few times when I had a full head of hair before I started shaving the sides and all that. And it was a pain in the ass to keep it. Like that's why I ended up wearing it as a ponytail as I got older, because it's just so inconvenient. Gets in the way, gets in your food, gets in your nose, gets in your mouth. So, you know, and being a guy, I prefer low maintenance. Like I don't want to be wearing berets or barrettes or whatever you call it. I don't want to be wearing like a lot of hairspray and mousse and shit. You know, if I can't just comb it and let it flop, then we're not in business. Like I need it to stay where it is most of the time. Because even right now, like this looks cool, but it's actually uncomfortable to me. I feel hot, and I feel, even if I'm not hot, I feel like greasy and hot. Even if my hair is completely clean and dry and everything, I still just feel ugh. All right, well, guys, my voice is starting to go. And of course, Doc just showed up and I'm starting to say goodbye. Welcome, Doc. It's good to see you, brother. Woo! I think I'm going to take off now. My wife just climbed into bed and she's got work tomorrow and I got stuff I got to do. I will hopefully have a guest next week. I'm not sure if it's going to be Eddie. I'm not sure if it's going to be Fleshy. I'm not sure if it's going to be a whole bunch of people. Hopefully I'll have a guest next week. If not, it'll just be me. But I'm going to aim to have a guest next week. So if not, hopefully you'll all be here. But yeah, so I think I'm going to close out. Hopefully the fire will be relit in my practices soon enough that I will have more products and things to share with you guys. Everything's tight around the world. Money sucks for everybody. The economy sucks for everybody. The world is on fire and nobody cares. You know, just try to hang in there. Even if the good guys lose, we're not all going to die the next day. It's going to take a while for all that shit to play out. So just try to enjoy the time you got left, because even if the good guys win, you could die tomorrow in a car accident or a fire or some dumb shit. So just enjoy yourself, man. Just live your life. Don't worry about it. You know, fight for what's right, fight for what you believe in, but live life to the fullest every moment. Don't let any of it go. And that's one of the things that I haven't been doing. Like in the last 2 years, I've been in trauma mode, just dealing with the shit that I've seen going on. And, you know, as that is finally integrated and healed, I'm able to enjoy life again. Even though it's sort of like when you find out you got cancer and you got like a year to live or something. The first couple of months is hell. And then once you finally get over it, you can kind of just live and try to enjoy what time you got left. Then you go into the hospital and get all your drugs and all that shit. And then you're done. So, you know, I guess I've reached the I don't care stage anymore. I still care, but it's like, you know, I still hope there's a cure. I'm still holding out hope. But I'm gonna treat whatever time I got left as a free human being. I'm gonna keep resisting and keep fighting, but I'm gonna also do my best to have fun and live life like it's not going out of style. And that's all I can suggest to you guys. So thank you guys for being here. Tess, what's up? I didn't even see you here before. What's up, Tess? And Alpha, I love you guys. I love you too, Solora and Crackbite and everybody. I'm really glad to have seen you guys. Hopefully next week will be a good one. And maybe next week I'll wear some Santa Clausy shit. Maybe I'll get like one of those hats with the little balls in the end or something. I don't know. We'll see. Probably not. I wouldn't do something like that. That's not my style. But maybe I'll have some Xmas decorations around, some Yule decorations. That'd be cool. So we'll see what I decide to do. Maybe I'll make them like, I'll have to see what kind of goth, you know, like goth Yule, goth Christmas, satanic Christmas shit I can find. One year my wife actually put on the Christmas tree, we used like a Barbie doll to represent like Lucifer as the star. It was pretty funny. Just as a joke, you know, just have fun with your holiday, however you celebrate it. And, you know, don't lose hope and don't lose sight. Just live that life, guys. That's all you can do. All right. So until next time, thank you guys for thanking me. Thank you guys for being here. Until next time, I will keep minding the shadows. I hope you do the same.